Okay, folks, this will be part two of General Johnson, U.S. Johnson. For her purposes, England has commanded the seas, not only the Atlantic Ocean, but all oceans. By setting her navy aside for the moment, there has never been a time in the past 40 years when any other nation was in a position. Oh, I've already read this. Any other nation was in a position to challenge either our country or our Monroe Doctrine in the fact of our own fleet. Now this is no time to rake up old wrongs against Britain, but in view of the arguments that are made to edge and jostle us into this war, it certainly is high time to explore all the old errors in this regard. Stand on our own feet. Now this is where it gets interesting. This is where I need people to have some insight. Give some heavy thought to what you're hearing here. Think it out. Stand on our own feet. Quite aside from all that, this country should have seen enough of what is going on in the world today to know that any nation which must rely for its own peace and for its own defense on the strength of any other nation is lost. We cannot rely on any other power but our own, Great Britain or any other. We can rely on nothing on this earth but the strength of our own right arm, our own resources, and the patriotism, valor, and fidelity of our own people, and thanks to God is enough. In the past 3 years, Europe has been strewn with the wreckage of nations that relied on other nations for their defense. Some of them relied on Britain. France had full power when Hitler started in 1933, full power to stop him there in his tracks. But she preferred to rely on her alliance with the little nations of Central Europe called the Cordon Sanitaire. They relied on her as she relied on them, and all relied on British sea power in the background. Oh, you know how they just went through that one little section? Now that's what the name of this was back then. It's the line. Blitzkrieg. Gone are those who relied on others. Austria so relied. They stepped aside and saw her swallowed. Czechoslovakia so relied. They went to Munich and tossed her to the wolves. Earlier, Britain had relied on France to help keep Mussolini out of Ethiopia, and France wanted Britain to help keep Hitler out of the Rhineland, which would have kept the peace of Europe in this good day. But each reliance failed. Each nation was tying its shoe and looking in the other direction when the call for help came. Finally, on the pledge of assistance, if she would resist, Britain and France pushed Poland into the line of fire. Poland fell. No help came, and all of Northern Europe crumbled. Holland relied on Belgium. Belgium relied on France. France and Norway on Britain. Where are those nations now? All except Britain, gone with the wind. And the epitaph of each should read, she relied for her peace and safety on some strength other than her own. Will America learn? Despite all this, we still are told that we must rely on Britain for our peace and our defense. Well, UN, the world order. Sorry, something happens to them. Now, I don't say all this in reproach of Britain or of any other stricken nation, but when the very reliance that ruined them is advanced to us as the reason either for our getting into this war or for continuing to rely for our defense on another nation, especially one that's been beat, then I am very sure that it is a duty, however unpleasant, not merely to point out these simple facts of life, but to make them as emphatic as the English language and the rules of radio permit. We are told that Hitler is our threat in the Atlantic, or might become so overnight if Britain fell. But we have a defense against that threat, as fine and strong a navy as sails the 7 seas. Where is it? Facing Hitler? Oh, no! It is out in the Pacific, almost half a world away. Why? Is it hemisphere defense of the Americas? Our fleet in the Pacific. No professional strategist will say that there is any pending practical threat to our west coast that we could not guard against on a reasonable basis and with a moderate force. See, we're talking about logistics, deployment of resources. Get a conception of all of this. All right. No professional strategist will say that there is any impending practical threat to our west coast that we could not guard against on a reasonable basis and with a moderate force. Nobody pretends that our fleet is out there to defend this continent. It is out there to give us a dominant voice in Asia, where our material interest isn't worth half a battle squadron, and where the Philippines have asked us to abandon our moral obligation to our flag, which we have promised to do in 1946. If that is defending the Americas, somebody has scrambled this good globe of ours all up, and all geography needs to be turned inside out or upside down. Saving Britain's empire. Now, of course, it is no such thing. We are out there to help preserve the British Empire in Asia. Is it necessary in order to keep the British fleet between us and Hitler? It may help, but it's a pretty far cry to such a conclusion. The real effect of it is not to keep the British Navy between us and Hitler. Its purpose is to rest the peace and defense of America on some force other than our own. Present indications are that we are in more danger of waking up some morning to find ourselves at war in the Far East, 7,000 miles away, than of anything that could conceivably happen to us on our Atlantic coast. Yep. Military bases for material interest. Logistics. All right. Bringing American dictatorship. That would be a war over issues which few, if any, of our people would understand, and that it's which fewer have any interest. Nobody who has studied this rapid trend of ours toward war to defend America by defending Britain, in quotation marks, will deny it. The further it goes, the more we shall have to give up every attribute of American freedom and democracy, and the closer we shall approach a war dictatorship, which will be as drastic as any known in Germany or Italy. You listening? I sure hope somebody is. I sure hope somebody will carry these words into the future. All right, at home, 1940 is not 1918. We had to do that in 1918. Woodrow Wilson hated that form of government. He gave up most of those great powers that day after the armistice. This administration does not hate powers centralized and personalized in the president. It has constantly sought them ever since 1933 and has never voluntarily surrendered one power granted on the excuse of an emergency. Would this country be willing to trust it with complete war powers? Or if the country did, would it ever give them up? A grave and growing danger is there. Hello? What's the answer? Our belligerent friends are arguing themselves into a curious dilemma. Keep out of war by getting into war? Defend America by defending Britain in Asia? Save our democracy by giving up our democracy? Mob rule, by the way, that's the root of the word. Republic. Republican government. Republic government. Not democracy. Two different beasts. You need to understand that too. In the meantime, what we have been doing to defend ourselves. Before I say anything about that, let me pay tribute to Franklin D. Roosevelt for building up and equipping a large one-ocean navy and for providing a great chain of outlying air and naval bases for defense at sea. All right. Paper and pencil defense. There is no time here to discuss the method by which the latter act was done, more than to say that it was unnecessary, highly questionable, and ominous. Aside from those preparations, however, the delay, the blunders, the lack of foresight in building up our landward defenses are tragic and inexcusable. To cover these failures, the country has been dazzled with appropriations of billions by misleading congressional reports and by constant display of rhetorical Roman candles. Now money appropriated is not munitions in hand. I guess I'm going to have to do this three-part. If you have to, just back up and re-listen to that, okay? I'm counting on you guys, everybody out there.